Welcome to My Grandpa's Train. Today is part 1 of the mighty 326 Hudson. I had to clean off some more space on my workbench for such a magnificent engine, and I had to grab a second parts tray because this has so many more parts on it than any other engine I have. Everything I have worked on up until now has been small stuff like Atlantics, Pacifics, Baldwin diesels, GM diesels, and rolling stock. No, this thing is a beast of a locomotive. It is not quite as large as the Northern engine I have, but it is simply massive. And it is very greasy. Every time I touch it, I get greasy stains all over everything. So the routine for this engine is typical for a restoration. First, disassembly, then degreasing, scrubbing away all the nasty dirt and grime. Then polish the motor and do any wiring and electrical repairs. Then put it all back together. I will also polish as many of the detail parts as I can. There are a lot of them. This also has the air chime whistle, or horn, or buzzer, speaker assembly in the tender. I discovered something about that which I think is very interesting. So, the air chime horn will actually be a video all on its own. Today's goal is to get the engine taken apart and cleaned. So now, let's get started.
Taking off the boiler cover. Well, what have we here? Okay, this is interesting. So here, first of all, we have a soldered on headlight, and this has a squashed bulb. I've never seen this before in person. I think I have seen this, and parts and pieces are falling out already. This is going to be a lot of work. So hopefully this headlight can be preserved because I don't think they make bulbs like this anymore. That is pretty neat. Wow, this is a lot more complex than any other locomotive I've worked on. Also, there's no joint in the wiring on this locomotive. It's solid wires from the locomotive to the tender. And I can see there's 4 screws. So I think I'm going to start by pulling off the tender shell. All right, now I can start removing parts from the locomotive. And the drive, the linkages are all, this one's bent out of shape, so this has been monkeyed with already a lot. This is going to be a lot of work. Well, this is certainly complex. If this is like how my Northern is assembled, I'm not sure I want to take that thing apart if I ever have to. The headlamp out of the boiler. Okay, so the lamp housing is off for the headlight. And apparently that actually does sit in there upside down like that. So this is right side up on the boiler. And the light bulb actually does go upside down. So that is interesting. I'm going to put that over there. So that was actually the easy part. So the most complex part of this is definitely going to be the side rod linkages. There's several pieces missing on this side. Unfortunately, the good news is I happen to have a extra Hudson chassis with, I believe it's most of the linkage pieces are there. Oh my. So I just pulled the cover off the tender and there's a bunch of plastic stuffed up in here. I have no idea what that's about. I don't think this is the right screw for this. And it is locked up. So this is by far the most complex locomotive I've ever worked on. This thing took 15 minutes just to get it disassembled to this point. There's a lot of moving parts in these locomotives. At this point, it's just the usual where I disassemble the motor, degrease everything, clean it, oil it, put the motor back together, and test it out. Okay, so the only way to separate the locomotive from the tender is to desolder all of the wires from the reverse unit on the tender. By the way, here's the speaker for the air chime horn. And notice it just has a capacitor. There is no resistor on this one. So I'm not sure if that's to make this one louder or what the deal is. Time to take this to the sink and scrub it. And then the motor is going to get its overhaul shortly. Okay, so at this point I have the main mechanicals put back together. The motor is installed, the smoke and choo-choo is put back together, and we can give it a quick test.
As you can see, the motor runs fantastic, and you may or may not be able to see how much smoke this puts out. I thought it may have been serviced, but likely not. It smokes good, then output drops off after a couple minutes, which means probably the wick is dried out. This is where I'm going to end part 1. I decided to shut off the camera so I could focus on reassembly. I also managed to lose some video files when my memory card became corrupt. Part 2 will show the locomotive and tender detail work and final assembly and then test drive. Spoiler alert! This thing runs and looks amazing. You are not going to want to miss part 2. So, if you don't want to miss out on all the action, make sure you subscribe. And next to that button on the left is the bell icon, which will automatically tell you when I put out a new video, normally every week. But sometimes it takes longer to make these more complex videos. Your comments are appreciated. So until next time, thanks for watching my Grandpa's Train.